One night, that's all I ask. The alien whispered after a decade of cold nights. The research station floated in the dark between stars where human and alien territories met in an uneasy peace after years of war, and Lisa Marie Carter had called this place home for 10 years longer than anyone else who had ever been stationed here. She walked through the empty corridors at night when the artificial lights dimmed to simulate Earth's evening and her footsteps echoed against metal walls that had witnessed 1,000 lonely sunsets. She was the communications officer, the bridge between two species that barely understood each other, and she had grown tired of translating words without ever truly connecting. The alien arrived on a cold morning. In March, when frost covered the observation windows despite the station's heating systems, her name was impossible for human tongues to pronounce, so she chose the name Lyra, after the constellation visible from her homeworld. She was tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water and eyes that held depths Lisa had never seen in any human gaze. Lyra was a cultural ambassador sent to learn human customs and teach her own people's ways, but from the first moment their eyes met, across the docking bay something shifted in the air between them like static before a storm. They worked together every day in the translation department, where words flowed between species through computer screens and careful pronunciation. Lisa taught Lyra about human idioms and jokes, and Lyra shared stories of her world where 3 moons rose every night and the oceans sang with bioluminescent life. Months passed, and their professional relationship grew into friendship. Lisa found herself waiting for Lyra's arrival each morning and feeling empty. When she left each evening, they shared meals in the station cafeteria, where Lyra tried human food with cautious curiosity, and Lisa learned to appreciate the strange crystalline nutrients that sustained Lyra's people an evening as they worked late on a particularly difficult translation. Lyra's hand brushed against Lisa's, and neither pulled away. The touch lasted only seconds, but it burned like fire through Lisa's veins, and when she looked up, Lyra's eyes held a hunger that mirrored her own, but there were rules-strict protocols about relationships between species. The war had ended only 15 years ago, and wounds still ran deep on both sides. Fraternization between humans and Lyra's people was not forbidden, but it was heavily discouraged, and anyone who crossed that line faced scrutiny and judgment. So they kept their distance even as the tension between them grew unbearable. They spoke in professional tones and maintained appropriate space, but their eyes told different stories. Lisa dreamed of Lyra every night and woke each morning aching with longing. Winter came to the station, bringing longer nights and colder temperatures. Lisa found herself spending more time in the observation deck, staring at distant stars and wondering what might have been if circumstances were differently. Ra found her there one night when the station slept and only emergency lights glowed in the darkness. Lisa didn't hear her approach, but suddenly Lyra was beside her, their shoulders almost touching as they gazed at the cosmos together. "I am cold," Lyra said softly, and her voice carried an emotion that translation software could never capture. "My people do not feel temperature the way yours do, but I have been cold for so long, not in body but in spirit." Lisa turned to face her and saw vulnerability in those alien eyes that made her heart break. 10 years, Lyra continued. "I have been among your people for 10 years, studying, learning, trying to understand, but I have never felt warmth until I met you." Lisa's breath caught in her throat. The confession hung between them. "Dangerous and Electress, I cannot offer you forever," Lyra whispered, moving closer until Lisa could see the faint patterns that danced across her skin like northern lights. "I cannot promise you tomorrow because our peoples would tear us apart, and my mission here ends in 3 days when the transport arrives to take me home." Lisa felt tears sting her eyes. 3 days, that was all the time they had left. "But I can ask for one night," Lyra continued, and her voice trembled with desperate hope. "One night to know what it feels like to not be cold. One night to understand this thing that humans call love. One night with you before I return to a lifetime of empty darkness." The request hung in the air between them, forbidden and beautiful. Lisa knew she should refuse, knew that one night would only make the goodbye harder. But when she looked into Lyra's eyes, she saw her own loneliness reflected back, magnified by years of isolation. "What happens after?" Lisa asked, and her voice was barely a whisper. "We remember," Lyra said simply. "We carry this warmth with us through whatever cold nights come. We know that for One moment in this vast universe we were not alone. Lisa made her decision. She reached out and took Lyra's hand properly this time. Not the accidental brush of colleagues, but the deliberate intertwining of fingers that meant something more one night. She agreed and felt something break open in her chest like ice melting in spring. One night to hold you. One night to pretend the universe is kinder than it is. They left the observation deck hand in hand and walked through sleeping corridors to Lisa's quarters. The door closed behind them, sealing them away from judgment and protocol, from rules written by people who had never known this kind of longing. What followed was tender and careful, as they learned each other's bodies despite their differences. Lyra's skin was cool but grew warm under Lisa's touch, and Lisa discovered that alien hearts beat the same desperate rhythm as human ones when filled with emotion. They talked through the night, sharing secrets and dreams and fears. Lyra spoke of her homeworld where she had never felt she belonged, and Lisa confessed how she had hidden on this station to escape a life that never fit her properly. As dawn approached, artificial lights beginning their slow brightening to simulate sunrise, they lay tangled together, exhausted and content. "I will carry this always," Lyra whispered against Lisa's hair. This one perfect night, Lisa held her tighter, knowing the transport would arrive in 48 hours, knowing they had stolen something precious from fate. The next 2 days passed in a blur of longing glances and careful distance in public. But they met again the following night, and the night after that. 3 nights total to build a lifetime of memories, 3 nights to prove that connection transcends species and politics and fear. When the transport arrived, Lisa stood in the docking bay with the rest of the crew to bid the ambassador farewell. They shook hands formally, and Lyra thanked her for her assistance with the translation work. But their eyes said everything that words could note. "I am not cold anymore," Lyra said quietly so only Lisa could hear. "And I will never be cold again because I carry your warmth with me." Then she was gone, walking up the ramp into the ship that would take her home across impossible distances to a world Lisa would never see. Lisa returned to her quarters that night and found a small crystal on her pillow. It glowed with soft light, pulsing in a rhythm she recognized her own heartbeat recorded, somehow in alien technology. She held it close and let herself cry for what they had shared and what they had lost. But even through her tears, she felt warm. Months passed, and Lisa continued her work on the station. But something had changed. She smiled, more laughed easier, and volunteers began to notice she was different, lighter, somehow less burdened. Then one day, nearly a year after Lyra's departure, a message arrived on Lisa's personal terminal, encrypted and marked urgent. It was Lyra's face on the screen, older somehow though. "Only months had passed. I have requested permanent assignment to your station," Lyra said, and her eyes sparkled with joy. "It took nearly a year to convince my government, but they have agreed. Cultural exchange, they call. But we know the truth." Lisa felt hope bloom in her chest like spring flowers. "The rules are changing," Lyra continued slowly but surely. "Our peoples are learning that connection matters more than old fears. I will arrive in 3 weeks, and this time, I am not leaving." Lisa's hands trembled as she clutched the crystal that had never left her side since Lyra's departure. "You asked for one night," Lisa whispered to the empty room. But fate, it seemed, had decided to be generous after all. 3 weeks later, when Lyra's ship docked, Lisa was waiting. And when Lyra descended the ramp, she ran into Lisa's arms with none of the formality that had marked their first goodbye. "Welcome home," Lisa said, and meant it. "No more cold nights," Lyra whispered back, holding her close. "Never again." And in that moment, surrounded by stars and possibility, they proved that love could bridge any distance, overcome any obstacle, and warm even the coldest nights in the void between worlds.